Hello and welcome to the South West London and St George's Recovery College Home Learning Service. My name is Neil and I am one of the peer trainers with the college. In this video we will be taking a look at the topic of triggers. You may find it useful to have a pen and paper ready in case you would like to make any notes. In this video we will look at what triggers are and how to recognize them, the impact triggers can have on your health and well-being, and how you can manage and reduce the impact that triggers can have. Before we start, it is important to bear in mind that thinking about triggers can sometimes bring up difficult memories and feelings that may be too overwhelming for you to manage on your own. Be kind to yourself and don't push yourself too hard. And remember that you are an expert in your own mental health. And an important thing about being an expert is knowing when you need help from others. So, what is a trigger? A trigger is an external event or situation that has a negative impact on your thinking, your emotions, or your behavior. In other words, it is something that happens to you or something that you experience that comes from outside and not from within, and which affects your mental health. Here are a few examples of things that might be triggers. Painful anniversaries, difficult events, having too much to do and feeling overwhelmed or under pressure, relationship problems, physical illness or pain, being criticized, teased or shouted at, financial problems, spending too much time on your own or isolating, being with someone who treats you badly, or starting something new. It is perfectly normal to have a reaction when a trigger happens, but if you don't learn to recognize them and respond appropriately, you will keep being triggered, which will, of course, have a negative impact on your mental health. When you are thinking about your triggers, please remember that triggers are very personal, and what might be very triggering for you might not have any impact on others, and of course, vice versa. So, it is important to try not to compare yourself with others, but focus on your own unique and personal experience. To help you recognize your triggers, it may be helpful to think about what happened before you felt upset. It's like becoming your own detective. You can ask yourself questions like, where were you? What was the environment like? Was there a lot of noise or a lot of people? Did you notice a particular smell? Who was there? What was happening? What time of the day or year was it? What were you being asked to do? Did you want to be there? The things that trigger you may change with time. Things that used to trigger you may no longer have the same impact, while you may find yourself being triggered by things that used not to affect you. To help you spot any new triggers, start by noticing any difficult emotions or negative changes in your thinking or behavior. For instance, you might notice that you are feeling angry or tearful, or that your voice is shaking or your heart palpitating. If you notice something like that, and you haven't spotted a known trigger, then run through these questions and see if you can work out what happened to start you feeling this way. If you would like to, now might be a good time to pause this video and spend a few minutes seeing if you can identify any of your triggers. If you can, write them down and come back when you are ready. Don't worry if you can only think of one or two right now. It's often not until we are triggered that we realize what our triggers are. Triggers have an effect on our brain and body. But what's happening? When a trigger occurs, it starts the body's fight or flight response, which, as the name suggests, prepares you to either run away from a threat or stand and fight it. Adrenaline is pumped around the body, the heart beats faster, the digestive system shuts down, muscles tense, and so on. As well as the body preparing to fight or run away, the areas of your brain involved in planning, organizing, and impulse control are shut down to allow you to respond quickly. Unfortunately, this can happen even when the threat is not actually real, but imagined. As human beings, we develop habits to allow the brain to take a break from constantly having to make decisions. This also works for triggers. We create an association between a trigger and the response that becomes automatic. This is why it is so important to recognize our triggers, so we can step in and make changes. Otherwise, we will keep getting triggered without realizing it. When you experience a trigger, it can affect you in many different ways. It can bring up traumatic memories and cause flashbacks. It can increase symptoms associated with your mental health condition. It can make it difficult to carry out daily activities such as shopping, socializing, working, and so on. In fact, triggers can make interacting with the world around you in general much more challenging. And of course, triggers can cause a relapse into unhelpful habits such as drinking, drug use, etc. Not only can triggers make you feel bad, but if they are ignored, they can start a chain reaction of emotions and behaviors that can snowball out of control. So it is important to discover how to reduce the impact of any triggers you experience. So far, we have looked at what triggers are, how to spot them, and how they impact us. An important thing about learning about our triggers is that it helps to develop our self-awareness. By being more self-aware, we can start taking control of how we respond to the triggers instead of allowing them to control us. Once you know what your triggers are, you may be able to decrease the likelihood of them happening. For example, if there is a particular person who often triggers you, then you can plan to avoid them as much as possible. However, it is impossible to stop all triggers. Sometimes we will have disagreements with people close to us, and we won't be able to avoid painful anniversaries or difficult times of the year. Nevertheless, we can work out a plan of what to do when they happen so that they do not affect us too badly. To help you identify things that may be helpful when a trigger occurs, try thinking about the following. Is there anything that you have done in the past that has helped? Check your toolbox. Is there anything in there that may help? Find out what other people have done in situations like this. And think about the advice you would give a friend who was in a similar situation. Now it's time to get started on your plans to manage your triggers. If you haven't already, start by making a list of your triggers. And as I said earlier, don't worry if you can only think of one or two right now. When you have thought of a trigger, think about what you might do to try and get back on an even keel if it happens. Write it down, and if the trigger occurs, give it a try. You may need to experiment to find out what works for you. Try something, see if it works, and then change or refine your plan. Remember, very few of us get it right first time. We have now come to the end of this video. We have covered a large amount of information in a little time, so please watch it again if you need to. If you have any questions about the video or would like to discuss any of the content on the phone with one of our trainers, don't hesitate to give us a call. The number to call is on the screen. I hope you have found this video useful. Keep an eye out for new videos and courses, and keep learning about your mental health. Remember, knowledge is power.